Andy is in charge of the Hitachi Data Systems Academy. He's an e-learning guy from way back. He's implemented LMS, and he's come through the other side. So we're going to talk about adaptive learning, which is a critical complement to all the stuff that Donald said. So Andy,
brilliant, thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you.
He's also a West Ham fan, which puts him
well
up in my estimation, I have to say.
Which is why Nigel is chairing this session, because we're the only two here actually. But, hey, I've known Donald for a long time. I actually volunteered to follow him, so how mad must I have been? That's a very difficult thing to do. But we did share a lot about this a few weeks ago over coffee in Brighton, and there's so much synergy between what you've just heard from Donald, what you heard this morning, and the keynote speaker, and what I'm going to talk about now, which is actually the practicalities. Because it's fine talking about theory, absolutely fine talking about theory, but how often do you see people who've actually got something doing some of this at an operational level? Now, just as a bit of background, I work for a company called Hitachi Data Systems, which probably most of you have never heard of, but every single one of you has used one of our products every time you click on Amazon, eBay, PayPal, etc. And we are quite a powerhouse behind a lot of the cloud stuff that's going on out there today. Although we're heavily involved in the cloud, what I'm going to show you later is not vaporware. That's the joke for the day, by the way. So, but what I wanted to also to cover before I go on, actually, something we're doing in this whole area of AI that I think you'll probably find really, really interesting. Hitachi Data Systems, we have recently launched a program called Predictive Crime Analytics, which we do actually have in use in the US. And this is taking real-time data from public safety systems, from the license plate readers that you have on your motorways, gunshot sensors, 911 dispatch systems, from the criminal record systems and all that kind of thing, to be able to track and predict where stuff is going to go down. So if anybody's seen Minority Report or A Person of Interest, this stuff is real, it's happening now, and HDS are actually doing some of this stuff. And that's all based on a lot of very, very clever algorithms. Who put that back? Is this moving forwards on its own? There's some artificial intelligence in here, you know. Okay. I didn't plan that, by the way. So, I wanted to really start off with trying to understand why we're doing this. Why are we actually bothering with a lot of the work we're doing anyway, before we even get on to understanding why it's adaptive. And this is the key thing for us. We are actually, the HDS Academy primarily is educating the customer and partner organizations, our customers. And that's a very, very different area to a lot of the stuff you'll have heard at the conferences around what are L&D going to do and how do we deal with some of those challenges. We have a very different set of sort of things here and very directly related to business outcomes. So the reason we're doing all of this is we want to drive customer satisfaction up. We want to drive revenue up and costs down. And that's revenue for us also as an education provider. Unlike all of you guys who have to fight for budgets, we have a revenue in excess of 14 million US a year just on educational revenue. Not as much as Mr. Lax yesterday in the LMS panel, who I was quite envious of the amount of income they generate at Philips. But that brings some very different drivers. And the way we want to do this is by linking the business data to learning data and using analytics to generate some actionable insights. And that's an area where I'm with you on this one, Don. I'm just going to skip over that one because we're running a little bit short on time. And really, let's talk about what some of our insights are. And you all do this, we all do this. We report on garbage. Data Protection Act training. 95% of our people have completed their DPA training. So bloody what? Does that really matter? Because what really should matter is, of the data breaches that occurred this year, they were caused by people who had or hadn't done the course. That would be much more meaningful data. And the challenge with that is, unless any of you know differently, no Chinese hacker has ever signed up to do the data protection course on my LMS. So, pointless. What we should be doing is getting to a point where we can understand what impact the courses we are giving is having on the bottom line, for example. So getting some correlation between the courses we run for our sales managers and sales, have they increased or decreased? We're in the process of building a new BI solution for the Academy at the moment that is actually going to link all the data from our sales CRM system to our learning data. I'm rather hoping that the answers we get from that are not as frightening as they potentially could be. We might get the answer that, actually, boys, you're not making any impact whatsoever. Yeah. Equally, linking them to help desk systems. We train a lot of our engineers who go out to customer sites to fix problems. So, do we know whether the help desk calls go up or down as a result of the training we're giving? No, we don't. We count how many bums on seats attended the damn course. Once again, meaningless rubbish. And all of those sort of things are important to us. And it's not about big data. It's about getting better insights from the data you already have, which we don't do enough of. And when we're talking about adaptive learning, what we're really talking about is taking that down to an even more micro level of actually getting data from the student whilst he's undergoing the training and having the algorithms in the tool adjust the training to actually meet the needs of that student. So we called our project, when we launched this, Project Timberlake. My boss has a sense of humour. It's just in time, just enough, and just for me. Some of the challenges, though, of course, we face is that every learner has very unique needs, and that's particularly relevant for us when we're training customers and partners. We don't know these people. You at least have a little bit of knowledge about your internal staff, but we don't know them. We also need to deliver globally, at scale and cost effectively. HDS trains in every country pretty much in the world where we're allowed to, under legislation, with the exception of Japan, strangely enough, where the parent company deals with all of that. And, of course, managers shouldn't be worrying about the bums on seats, as I say. They should be worried about capability and competence. This does have a back-end impact further down on your LMS processes and all of that kind of stuff, and I'm going to come to that in a moment. And, of course, I think everybody would agree, or most would agree, current teaching approaches are not effective and they're definitely not efficient. So the goal, and this is not dissimilar to Don's slide, we've got to stop taking people from the left to the right. This sheep thing. Now, how many years have we been saying that for? And how many more years are we going to carry on saying that for? And what we really need to is to move to a point where it really doesn't matter at what point you join this and at what point you leave it. That's a by far better approach. And that's not actually, it's a slightly similar sort of picture to Donald's. And I didn't steal his, by the way. And this is really what adaptive learning is going to do for us. And, we started off with the questions on some of this. When I first joined the HDS Academy 4 years ago, I joined at a time when we were holding our annual Academy global meeting. First day in the new company, I walk into a meeting with a bunch of strangers, and they've brought Bob Mosher in. And I thought, wow, this is a learning team that really want to make some difference here, that they spend a lot of money to bring somebody of that nature. And if you don't know Bob, he is around somewhere downstairs today. And this whole sort of idea of focusing on performance support for these for our training efforts has led to a lot of what we're doing today. But we also looked at what else we could do, and of course we can use educational research and neuroscience. I'm actually going to take a few. Actually do something I don't normally do, which is read a little bit off here, because I'm not the neuroscience expert. That's Don's job. But what we've got is, there is a lot of science behind this, and if you've ever come across the Neuro Leadership Institute and David Rock, they've come up with this sort of model, the AGES model. And we've taken a lot of the thinking from this behind what we're doing with adaptive learning and how we create it. So this is where we get some medical terms I will probably mispronounce. but they're in that red thing that Don's got on the table. So for the first one, for the hippocampus to activate sufficiently for learning to occur, the learner needs to be paying full attention to the topic being learned. Right, that's killed most of university first-year education off already, hasn't it? Generation, associate the learning with pre-existing knowledge. So the more associations connected to a memory, the thicker the web is, and therefore the easier it is to find a memory later. Creating vivid memories. How many times have we heard at conferences that the whole idea of storytelling and things that actually make you remember things a lot? And of course, spacing, distributing over time and repetition. And that in itself gives us a little bit of a problem later on. So, adaptive learning. For those who've not come across it, do not confuse this with Kineo's ADAPT learning tool. That is about adapting to the device. This is about adapting to the learner. Okay, and I mentioned that only because a couple of people said to me, oh, has that got something to do with Kineo's great tool? And a great tool that's got nothing to do with this. So, computer or mobile-based asynchronous training that adapts to the needs of each learner. We've built in, we've listened to Mr. Ebbinghaus. We're thinking about deliberate practice and spacing. Formative testing is in there as well, and detailed reporting to monitor the results and ensure competence. At no point yet have I mentioned the magic word SCORM, course completion. These courses do not complete. Now think about that. You've invested how many millions in your LMS? And we're moving all our e-learning to a course that doesn't complete. I'll come on to that. So, how does it all work? Basically, this is a very clever tool from a company called Area 9 Learning in Copenhagen called Smart Builder. It's been extensively used in higher education for a number of years. They have millions and millions of data points that they've used with their technology, done a lot of work with McGraw-Hill. Just this kind of tool is just moving into our space now. There are, Area 9 are one of the big players, Cogbooks that Don mentioned earlier, but they're not as prolific as the number of e-learning content vendors downstairs, sadly. So prediction for 2017-18, at least one or two of these guys should be downstairs without a doubt. So what we're doing is we're constantly probing with questions, and as a result of the answers to those questions, the appropriate learning resources are delivered. Now that may be video, maybe text, the traditional sort of online things that we can do. But it's constantly changing. The algorithms behind monitor how long it takes you to answer the question, sort of trying to understand the amount of thinking time that goes into this. We also are looking to get some insights into unconscious incompetence. Trying to understand who's guessing at this, who really does know this. And the algorithms take all of this into account in the delivery of the learning objects that they are then presented to you. And then it's also comparing with how others did, and so on. So here's a typical sort of question screen, one of the probes I was talking about. Nothing wrong with this. We've got the normal sort of checkbox answers. But the sort of thing we're picking up here, this is where we ask them, do you know the answer? I know it, I think so, I'm unsure, I've no idea. And then when you start to take into account what they answered, what their answer to this was, how long it took them, and all these kind of things, you get some very interesting insights from all of this. And I'm going to attempt, how are we doing on time? Good. To actually show you this live. So second mistake of the day. First one is trying to follow this man. Second one, live demo. Yeah, moving through, and actually to move people through from the unconscious incompetence through to conscious competence. It's a very dangerous, particularly with the sort of stuff we're dealing with. I mean, if we were training surgeons, I'd be even more worried. But you know, the amount of damage a bad engineer can do to a lot of very expensive IT equipment. And then we provide feedback to the students, including on that particular area. So we'll tell them, yeah, this is pretty good. You know, 43% of this stuff, you knew the answer. but we're a little bit worried about this 7% down here. And as you go through the course as a student, you can provide feedback on what you've seen, the questions you've been asked, the content you've been provided, so that we can start to improve the quality of the content. You know, particularly, I mean, we get a lot of engineers who will say, no, that's wrong. That's not the way you do it. And they never get that opportunity to feed that back in a traditional web-based course. So we've built that in as well. And because this course never has an end, if we feel the need to change any of it, we will simply do that. And the student will then pick up the fresh information when they refresh their learning next. So, well, let's see if this thing's going to work. So far, so good. This is our current LMS, not the one we will have in June. So sorry to anybody from Saba who's in here. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you sort of two things. The first one is what a course looks like when you first run it, because there's a very interesting introduction. I'm hoping the sound is going to be on for this one, because we give quite a nice explanation to the student, and I thought that might be helpful for you to understand what we're telling them this is all about. Thank you. I've got some screenshots just in case, as I'm sure you'll be aware, but
welcome to Selling Hitachi Live Insight for IT Operations. This course is being presented in a new innovative platform called Adaptive Learning. This approach is based on what you know and don't know. It will deliver a personalized learning plan that focuses on the content areas you need most. You will be asked a series of questions and prompted to rate how confident you are in your answers. Be honest. Don't worry about being wrong or being sure of your answer. This is not a test. The idea here is for the platform to adapt to your needs by delivering the appropriate content for each module. Click the button in the lower right corner to continue.
Yes, we can't get away from mouse clicking on this.
Click the button in the lower right corner to continue.
He doesn't normally repeat himself.
An 80% proficiency or better on all modules is necessary to confirm completion. However, this course will remain as in progress in your learning history in the Learning Center to encourage you to continually recharge to refresh your knowledge. If you have any feedback or questions on this course, please click the Give Feedback button.
Okay, there's some very important points in here that really are a challenge when you're trying to launch this stuff. Our learners love this, by the way, and they love it because it reduces the amount of time taken to get to competence, because they're not wasting their time going through crap they don't need to know. We have worked out already, and I can't remember the figure, the amount of money and person hours, we believe we can save on compliance training alone by taking a different approach to it. And if we can reduce the amount of time spent on compliance training, and most of the problems are caused by Chinese hackers anyway, then I think that's a result all the way around, isn't it? So, the two things here, first of all, this recharge, the idea of recharging, is the part where we're talking about continuous learning, continuous refreshing, dealing with the problems of memory degradation as you go along, the opportunity for us to refresh the content when we change things. We work in a very high-tech, fast-moving industry where, you know, the answer to the question, how many gig of RAM do you need to install this today, might be something different next week. So, with all of that in mind, here's the problem. You can't say when the course is finished, and therefore, your LMS, you can't send a thing back saying, course done. And now that really cheeses off the people involved in compliance because they want the tick in the box, don't they? Well, at least the compliance people do. I'm not so sure whether the regulators care. The regulators care that you're actually training your people in some way, improving their competence, but the tick box mentality still persists. I used to work in financial services for many, many years, been out of it now for a long time, but I suspect the successor to the FSA is still looking for people to tick the damn box. Is that correct? Anybody who's in that game? Yeah, that's not what it's about. What we should be talking about is understanding the competence of the people. Now, I realise we're running out of time, and I want to make sure there's plenty of time for questions. I'm sure people have got a lot of questions for Don. So, where have we got to? Excuse me, this is a very small. So, what I wanted to show you now is what this looks like to the learner in terms of how we tell them where they are. So we actually have a dashboard and we're looking to improve this and work on it. And we're taking all of the data about your current level of proficiency or competence, whatever it happens to be, and we're building it into this adaptive learning dashboard to give you an idea on each of these. These are actually courses, individual courses, where you are on each one with an overall proficiency across the whole of the learning curriculum that you have there. And you can see at a glance then which ones you really need to focus on, and you can go in and recharge and pick up the areas where you're missing. And we're looking to make that even more graphically appealing to the learners. And of course, that's not an LMS screen, is it? Not today it isn't. And I believe that there are a number of things that are going to change as we move along with that. But these are the challenges. And for those of you who want to implement this kind of tool, you probably need to think about this. Most of them aren't technical, by the way. They are things like line managers expect to see that you've passed a course. You can't do that if you're not sending a pass mark back. We're actually having to do this at the moment on one particular course. We have got the tool to give us the data at the point when they first hit 80% proficiency, and then we're marking the LMS record complete, which is a total nonsense, really. So you need to win the hearts and minds of line managers to thinking that learning doesn't stop. Learning is continuous, and so, do you mind waiting just till the end? We want to align this with competency frameworks as well. Because what we want to do is take this data out and mark the competence that you saw on the dashboard earlier and align that with the competency frameworks in the LMS. Once again, there's no integration to any known LMS on earth that's going to do that at the moment. The other things I think it probably does is it probably makes you think a little bit differently about the granularity of the learning objects you're designing, because you're designing at a much lower, more granular level. I actually think that's a really good thing because it makes a lot of them reusable. So there's no reason why a lot of the video assets in here would not appear on our support site for our customers, for example, our customer community, which fortunately we in the Academy also control. And those are some of the problems that I think you need to think about when you're doing this, but then none of them are a reason for not doing it. And I think the thing that I think is going to hopefully change some of this for us, getting that data out on the competency level, because bearing in mind it changes, it can change daily, it could change twice a day. You go in and do something in the morning, you're at 79% proficiency, you think, I'm going to take a break. I'll go for a pint with Don and we'll come back and we'll finish this off. That's potentially 2 different records of your competency at given points in time. Now that won't matter too much to us. It might do in some industries where they're actually very time sensitive on things that you have to have. There used to be a Saba customer who was in the nuclear industry that if you hadn't passed a certain course at a certain level, your key card to get further inside to the reactor area did not work. So I appreciate for some people that might be important. So what we're looking to do is at some point we're working with the vendor to add XAPI support to the tool so that we can then take messages back to the LRS in our new LMS that say, Don did this particular thing and got to the level of competence on this particular competency proficiency piece. And then we can start to use that data. And we've got lots more data points there, some of which we will actually be able to relate directly, because we've got more of them, to the sales data that we're pulling into our BI environment to say, well, actually, we have a better correlation now between the effect of training this guy and the sales that resulted shortly afterwards there, and continuously monitoring that. So this is a real tool, as I say. If anybody wants to talk to me about it, I'm more than happy to do that offline. I appreciate it, but I don't have a huge amount of time. I personally think adaptive learning is the future, without a shadow of a doubt, and we no longer develop any SCORM-based e-learning. None. So,
on that happy note. Thank you. Thank you.